Thank you, Salt Lake City. It is lovely to be here. Apology for my accent. I'm from Manchester in England. Thank you. Thank you. That's my brother. I knew there was a reason why I brought him here. Probably like many of you in this room, my mum has no idea what I do for a living. So, and I love her dearly, she loves me, but she has no clue. She's even been to one of my solo exhibitions, still no clue. So, being an arty type, flouncy arty type, some people call me the Kim Kardashian of data visualization. I thought, Mum, what I'll do, I'll do you a drawing, because, I'm an artist, right? So I drew this, and I said, Mum, you see, what I do, it's art and design and technology, and where those three things meet, it's like the shape of the things I make. And she looked at me blankly. I said, no, Mum, look, right, it's like, art, design, technology, there, you see it, like that? And she looked at me again and she said, I told my hairdresser you invented Google Maps. So I looked at her and thought for a second and then just said, close enough. But you know what? It is hard, it's hard for me to know what I do, to be honest, because it's kind of eclectic. I flew into Salt Lake City a few years ago and then went to Park City for the Sundance Film Festival and did an installation for Airbnb where I made 12 tiny receipt printers where people could share stories via text message, and we made a jungle of 5,000 stories that was told in a week in a special Airbnb house. No one told me that it snows in Park City, and I hate the snow. But anyway, that was great. It was good, honestly. And then, so that's like an electronic thing I've done. And then I have no qualifications, by the way. I left school at 16 with 0 qualifications. I don't even have a qualification in art. But this is a piece of work that is now in the permanent collection of MoMA. And I remember getting the email from MoMA saying, we'd like to do this with you. And I just stared at that email for a good 10 minutes. And I wanted to ring my art teacher up from my high school days and ring her up and just laugh down the phone. But I didn't do that because I didn't have a phone number. And this image is every second of Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo in one image. And it's called Cinema Redux. And this to me is data, and we're going to be talking about data. So that to me is data, and it can be realized as a print piece, but it can also be realized as things you can hold in your hands. I asked myself a question, what would happen if you could bump into data? You're walking along, whoops, just tripped over some data there, So this is environmental data. These are not renders. These are physical things that are 3D printed in wood, and they're environmental data that was collected around London, and then we put them back in the environment for people to find. So it's born from data, then goes back into the environment. But when I think about this eclectic mix of what I do, there is a commonality, and I think what I am really is a collector. I've always been a collector. Before I got into design, I used to go around vinyl record shops when I was a lot younger, and I was a lot cooler, to be honest. And I would go around vinyl record shops and find interesting break beats and rhythms, and I would compile them for a little record company in London and create new things from ready-mades. It's what Marcel Duchamp talks about. And I like that idea of taking things that already existed and recombining them in interesting and new ways. And I think that's what I still do now. All these years on, 30 years on from when I was doing that, I'm now doing the same but with digital technology. And so to do that, I have it's kind of a closet of digital things that looks like this. And the little experiments, they are things that do one thing well. I might wake up in the morning and say, how do I wrap a line around a sphere, for instance? I might also wake up and think, why have I not got any friends? But that's something else entirely, not for you to worry about. So these are like little experiments that I do, and you'll see how I collect these, and I think it's important as human beings to collect experiences across the range of things, and that can be collecting little code snippets or little visual things or whatever it is. And we have a great device with us now. We have our phones that we can collect things all the time, so it's great. But I encourage everyone to do this. Make little things, as you'll see that they combine to make something a lot bigger. And it's about this. It's about collect, curate, combine. Collection on its own is not enough. We need to curate and filter. I think we need to filter the world a lot more than we do. Set your bar really high. Basically, Ed Sheeran's down here. I'm joking. All right, so curate things, and then it's about combining them, using an aesthetic, a composition, consideration. This is an artist called Bela Kolarova, who's sadly no longer with us, Czech artist. I love this stuff. And maybe I need to get out more. But this is, you can see these are just ready-mades. These are things that already existed in the world. But then you apply composition, you apply an artistic thought, and they become something else. So on the left, they are just paint swatches that she's created a pattern with. But I love the one on the left, I really love, and they're just button fasteners that you walk past every single day in the supermarket and pay no attention to them. But if you apply a kind of graphic design mentality to that, and you apply the idea of collection of many things to create one thing, then it becomes something else. And I like the power of that. I was working on a project with Google that was a top secret thing and no one has ever seen, so I could just be making this up to make me look good. But I'm fascinated by what is data. And to me, everything is data, everything is number. These were, and this project that we worked on with Google for a while, it was just basically lots of sketches using a thing called a pencil. I'm a pencil geek, and I love a pencil because it has a built-in progress bar. That's my best joke, by the way. Okay reaction, not bad. So these are my pencil shavings from my whole time I spent with Google. And I kept them. Again, don't have any friends. And I kept them, and I spread them out and realized that these were a side effect of the process, and they're effectively a timeline of data of my time spent working with Google. And so I get paid to do this, luckily. And so it's lovely when Pluralsight got in touch with me and said, we have this amazing event. And to be honest, I didn't really know the company before they got in touch, so I had to do a lot of research. And they said, we could give you some data, and could you make something for us? And of course I said, yes, absolutely. Just please don't send me to Park City again. And And so we start that process. And they gave me a CSV file with 1.3 million rows of data. And I had to take that and make it beautiful. So this is the start of every process. We worry too much about beauty at the beginning. Everything starts out ugly. Now, I'm going to show you a slide now that's taken me years to research. It's been really hard to get this slide together. It's taken me a lot of time. When I show it, you may need a few moments to make it sink into your brain. This is the moment where you want your cameras ready for the Twitter moment. I want to show you my incredibly complex process. That's it. So, it starts out, I don't care what you do, this is the process. So you start out and you're going, what am I doing? What? And then you're trying to get to this moment of clarity, this singularity at the end. Perfection is this cruel temptress that you can never get to perfection. Though I have to say, this event is pretty close, right? But you're trying to get to this moment of perfection signified by this circle, but of course the circle isn't perfect. So you're trying to get to this process, drill it down and filter down and hone things and craft and craft and craft. And so that's how I start the process of making this stuff. And I do my own collections of things with this data, so that's how I started. So this was, I started to look at how to group things, and I was almost like thinking about Petri dishes and creatures and things. And so you can see that, this didn't really make a lot of sense. But what I'm trying to find here is, what is the shape of this thing? How does this thing look? How does it feel? What are the shapes that are revealed by this data? I'm not trying to create some kind of amazing infographic at all. This is more on the art side, right? So, and also, I would encourage everyone, when you first start out, create something to criticize. You start a conversation. Share this stuff. Share the ugly things. Because when you share that stuff, it will start a conversation, and someone might say something that says, oh, that's interesting, and you didn't think of that. So this two-way collaboration, I always really like that bit. I also, I don't, even though I work with data quite a bit, I've got to confess, I don't get inspired by data viz blogs or data viz people. No, some of them are okay. But I'm more interested in other things. So I would encourage you to increase your bandwidth of your input, because you're going to get better output. So this is Bridget Riley, op art pioneer of the 60s, and I really love this quote, because I think it sort of summarizes when you're trying to mess around and play around and see what emerges. And for me, I really like this, the mathematics behind this. This is the head of a sunflower. It's called a Vogel Spiral, kind of a Fibonacci thing going on here. And I've always liked this pattern. I think it's kind of interesting. Nature blows my mind. How does nature know how to do that? It's what? So I've used this kind of algorithm before, and I used to make, so I go back to this closet that I mentioned at the beginning, and I thought, hang on a minute, I've got this algorithm that I could use as a way to lay things out. And I'd look back in the closet, and I've got this interface that I did many, many years ago that used this pattern. We don't see stuff like this on the web anymore, do we, really? This was done in a thing called Flash. So now, just for a moment, can we please have a minute's silence for Flash? So I loved it. That's why I'm on this stage, by the way. I made my career making this kind of stuff. But I realized that, I've got those mathematics, so maybe let's use that. So this is that algorithm. I can lay some dots out, and I thought, okay, let's have 300 dots. The outside dots represent 20 hours, and the middle are a shorter time span, and every dot is 4 minutes difference. And I would use that to lay out the data, because within the data that I got from Pluralsight, it told me how long an assessment took to complete, and it was from 0 to 20 hours plus, and we capped it at 20 hours. Now, what you're trying to do here is create some texture. So once you start to play around with these things and have different dot sizes, I realized that I could use the score value to create different size circles and use color to also show different score values. So you can see that you get different patterns going on. So I then started to plug that in with the data, and I started to create this thing, just playing around here. It's kind of got an op art feel, a pop art feel maybe even. Op art's black and white, so it's more pop art, I guess. Again, all those influences coming in, and then I realized actually that when I put this slide together, it was actually very similar to Bella Colorado's one. I was like, well, that's weird. And that's what inspiration is, by the way. Inspiration, the difference between inspiration and copying. Inspiration, you let it become fuzzy in your brain, and then what happens then? All your personality and your idiosyncrasies stick to that inspiration, and it becomes yours. So what I ended up making was this, which is the whole Pluralsight universe of every course, every assessment, 1.3 million bits of data in this image. If you've ever taken an assessment, you are part of this image. And then, obviously, you can get close up. So, Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect, don't know what that is, but it looks cool. Which, for me, is the main thing, right? Okay. React is beautiful, and and you see this space just before the outer ring. So there's lots of people taking slightly longer, and then but the majority are kind of on it. I love how magenta is this someone who's got the perfect score. It's like, wow, the magenta person. And so there's and then JavaScript is like huge. And a few more of these. GitHub. All right. Oh, I love it. Look at that GitHub. It's just like a beautiful thing, right? But then it's about, role IQ. So I thought I would visualize some specific roles in connection with role IQ. So this is the Angular web developer visualization, which makes up JavaScript and CSS and various other things. Security analyst. And I love, you can see that that's a lot sparser, but it's still very beautiful. Server administrator is still cool. So, if you've got a really geeky job, if that's your job, you can go, yeah, but look at this. I am sexy, right? So, and then little Microsoft Azure admin, I like as well, So I'm going to leave you one final slide, and then we've got a surprise for you as well, because I'm nice like that. I'm going to leave you with this, that great things are done by a series of small things brought together. So I want you today, I hope you continue to make a lot of small things and can then continue to make even better, greater things. Thank you very much. Now, before I finish, they're going to have to get me off with a hook in a minute. They're going to chase me around the stage. I'm not coming off. Go away. No, I've got to get a flight in 3 hours, so anyway. But we have a little surprise for you that maybe someone else is going to do. But great. Adam Gunn, creative director of Pluralsight, thought it would be a great idea to make T-shirts for everyone of this stuff. So we have got, I've always wanted to say this, T-shirt cannons.